Hello, and welcome to the Hero Report podcast. My name is Ari Cohen. I'm a professor of political science at the University of Nebraska. And with me, as always, of the Hero Construction Company, Matt Langdon. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm also well. Getting ready to watch some cricket again today, the World Cup 6-week long episode or event. So, been getting lots of work done while the cricket's on in the background.
I bet. Lots of batsmen and wickets, and I don't know the first thing about cricket. I know that you could play it forever, I think. Doesn't it just go on indefinitely?
One form of the game does, yeah, but this one is just the one-day version. So the tournament only lasts 6 weeks.
Only. Hard to believe. Well, you know what they say, Matt. The key to success is to leave them wanting more.
That's right, and they definitely do that with the World Cup.
Well, it's an exciting time for TV watching, isn't it? As everybody was bathed in the blue light of their televisions last night, watching many hours of Academy Award coverage. You and I assume your loved ones all gathered round to see which of the fine films and fine actors and actresses and directors would be rewarded for their for all their hard work. And what did you think?
Well, if I had been in America, I would have been huddled around with my family in the evening. But as it was, I was watching during the day while they were at school. So it's a lonely process watching the Oscars live here. It was, I don't think there were too many surprises, but I suppose the thing that stood out to me was that it seemed that everyone had an issue to talk about this year. It seemed that this year was the year of letting people know what you were mad about, and it just went on, and there were tears in the audience, and there was all sorts of outrage on the internet today about various flubbed lines and that sort of thing, and obviously just attacking people that whose opinion you don't agree with. So that's fairly standard, but this had a bigger audience than the usual event.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, I was very surprised by all of the outcomes. As the father of young children, of course, I watched none of the films that were up for the awards. So anything could have happened, and I would have been surprised. Of course, also as the parent of young children, I did not watch the Academy Awards, but I have seen all of the things that you're referring to, usually in Tumblr animation form. So I've read some of the key points, and I'm certainly prepared to discuss them. I think, obviously, being online today, I've noticed a lot of people have something to say about this person's speech or that person's speech. The one that I think has been singled out the most, as far as I've seen, has been Patricia Arquette. Nobody seems to be. Some people seem supportive, but most people on the left and the right seem to have found problems with what she said. So it's an interesting moment, I guess, for us to talk about heroism, because perhaps the connection to heroism isn't so obvious. The Academy Awards, people in gowns that cost many thousands of dollars, and everyone taking home little gold statues and so on and so forth. It doesn't seem like the most obvious sight for heroism, but why don't you go ahead and pitch me what you think is interesting to talk about here with regard to heroism?
Well, I think firstly the other interesting piece to our conversation is that I have been asleep during all of the reactions, so I haven't seen all of the Tumblr posts. So that we'll be able to talk as a whole about the experience, each contributing half. I think part of me is not too surprised, because I think the whole industry is around making hero stories, and I think um, the Birdman was about an actor who was suffering from the fallout of being a famous action hero and trying to be taken seriously. You had the struggles of the theory of everything, um, a hero's journey of boyhood, and so on. And I think, I mean, it seems it's the movies that get attention each year are the ones that are dealing with some cause, right? And Selma, obviously, this year, the first major movie that had not Malcolm X, MLK featured at all, and it seems to go hand in hand. However, we don't usually see so many people pitching their cause, and I think that's what was interesting this year. So Patricia Arquette, it seems like the fallout is from something she said after her speech. Is that right, or is that the left's anger and the right's anger is on what she said on stage?
As far as I can tell, some people are angry because she spoke out in favor of what was it, income equality? Is that right?
Yep.
And so some people don't think she should have said anything. These are people on the right, mostly, who think that everything is hunky-dory, men and women, all the same. We should stop having an issue about it. And then on the left, people critiquing her for her lack of intersectionality, her whitewashing with regard to the various issues of people who are feminist or work on feminist causes, and so on, right? So, that was sort of what struck me was the even when you are making a statement about a cause that for many people, I suspect, seems fairly straightforward, there will always be plenty of people who think that you shouldn't have said what you said, or shouldn't have said anything at all, or should have said something different, or should have said something more.
Right. So I think, yeah, I mean, I think it seems she drew the ire of others in invoking or requesting help from other oppressed minorities. But I think I think the thing that people are reacting to is that white women are certainly under white men on the totem pole in the Western world, but they're not anywhere near any of these other groups that she called out. I think so. She said people of color. I'm not. I'm not sure if that was particularly taken as insensitive, but I think anyone who's not white and is a woman is in worse shape than Patricia Arquette is.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, she obviously got a lot of support from the audience, from women in particular. Meryl Streep was trying not to stand up and cheer for her, and J-Lo sitting next to her was cheering. So I think she probably got the most attention afterwards for and I mean, she was very clearly impassioned when she was talking, right? So yeah, I think that was probably the prime example. The other one that stood out to me was after the performance of the song from Selma.
Yeah.
There were tears in the audience. I think they showed the actor who played Martin Luther King crying. They showed there was someone else that was crying, and I can't remember who it was. But that was clearly an emotional thing, and the two guys at the end just put it out there that this is that the US is the most incarcerated country, and there are more jailed black men than there were during slavery, and so that's the kind of thing I think that seems fairly uncontroversial because of the delivery. Maybe that it was more measured, maybe. But again, I haven't seen
Well,
any. I don't
I
know.
don't know. I'm sure that if you went looking for it, Matt, you could find plenty of people on Twitter or on Facebook who who were not happy to hear about the plight of African Americans during their while they were enjoying the Academy Awards, right? These are also the people, if you go looking for them, there are plenty of them out there who feel that the biggest snub was American Sniper, right? If we're talking about hero movies, that how dare any other movie win when a great American patriot and hero such as Chris Kyle was being portrayed in a film, and the film was so successful, and it's only because the left-wing communists of Hollywood stand in opposition to good sense and decency that this wasn't the runaway choice for all awards, right? So I mean, everything's out there if you want to go find it. You've got your whole day ahead of you. I assume that's what you'll spend your time doing. But look, I mean, I just saw a thing that Ann Coulter is going to be on CNN later talking to Don Lemon. I'm sure that's going to be filled with brilliant analysis. I'm sure they'll hit on some of these points that we've been talking about, but probably from a different direction. The thing that I find so interesting is that obviously, like, this is not like a new thing. I think that what you point out is the volume of it. There were more people making speeches about causes or about the expansion of attention to certain groups or certain issues. There was certainly more of it. It seemed like. This time around. But obviously, people have been doing this for decades, right? I mean, you literally have a stage where everybody's watching you, and you can say what you want for at least a minute or two before they start playing the music and someone comes and walks you off the stage. So, if you've been thinking about it, it's a great time for you not simply to say thank you to your agent and to your loved ones, but in fact to make some sort of statement about some cause that's near and dear to your heart. And people have been doing this for a long time. But I do think you're right that we saw a special amount of it this year, which was interesting, of course, because everybody talked in the run-up to the Academy Awards about how what did they say? Just sort of about how white the ceremony was this year, or was going to be this year, and so it was interesting to see all of these causes being brought out by all of these people at this particular Academy Award ceremony.
Yeah, I think there was definitely an outcry of the whiteness of the nominees. I think I saw that Michael Moore was harking back to his day on the stage, however many years ago that was, and seemed to be taking some credit for starting the craze of putting your cause on the stage. But like you say, there's an enormous global audience for this show, so it certainly makes sense. I think the one that's seems to be getting a lot of play on my Facebook newsfeed is the screenwriter from The Imitation Game, who said that he had tried to kill himself when he was 16, and his message was framed in such a way that it was really a shout out to anyone, I think, and the message was similar to our friend Dave Rendell's Freak Factor, that that your difference is your strength. So it's that there were lots of different delivery styles, and the other one that I found interesting was the director of Birdman, Alejandro Iñárritu, and I think he was up there 2 or maybe 3 times, and it wasn't until right at the end when he seemed to have been encouraged to speak about Mexicans, both in Mexico and in the U.S. And I found that interesting that he was initially just talking about the craft and his experience with the film, and then it seemed like he got a very deliberate message from somebody to take this opportunity. So as that was the last award, I haven't really seen any response to that. So I'm wondering what the response was to the idea of Mexican rights and Mexican government and the support of this immigrant nation for the current immigrants.
Yeah, the only thing I've actually seen on that one is people critical of Sean Penn for making a green card joke.
Well, I saw that as it was happening, the response to that, and as a former green card holder, I took that in a very different way. I didn't take that as being anything to do with Mexican. It was more about this guy keeps winning awards in our American awards show. We've got to get rid of him. And the joke could have been made for an English person at any time during the night as well. If the Theory of Anything had kept winning awards all night, he could have made the same joke and it would have been the same joke. I think that was a bit clutching at straws to be offended by Sean Penn. And Sean Penn's got plenty of ways to offend people. I don't think you need to create motivation in a joke.
Sure. So here, Matt, I want to get into maybe the part about this that's not immediately clear, right? Here you have America's liberal elite, right? I mean, by all accounts, not every one of them, but by all accounts, the room is filled with wealthy left-wing Americans, and as you say, tons of British people, right? Because the American film and television industry is literally overrun now with actors from the UK. But let's say left-wing. Yeah, and so these people get up, and there's a parade, one after the other, of people making very kind of lefty statements about causes typically associated with the American left, right? So where's the heroism there, right? I mean, you stand up in front of a room full of people who all agree with you, and you say a thing they all agree with, and they applaud like mad. And you do this just after they've given you an award. It's good times for everybody, right? Where's the risk? What's difficult here?
Right. Well, I think that the difficulty is that audience that we've spoken of and the reaction online. Because there's a real risk to your career if you misstep. And I think that it's well known that winning an award at the Oscars increases your box office total, right? That's why the studios spend so much money on fating their entries for nominations. So I mean, there's a bump in rentals and box office take just by getting a nomination, and you see that when the nominations come out, all the new posters and ads come out with 4-time nominated movie, etc. So we know the positive reaction to being featured on the Academy Awards, but certainly if you make a misstep on that stage and it's widely taken as a misstep, as a problem, then studios are going to be nervous about putting you in their movie, because we know that studios put actors in movies very deliberately because of their box office draw. So it would be interesting. I think there's a difference between career levels. I think a director is less visible, so a director's got a bit more scope to make some statements, unless the director makes themselves a personality like a Michael Moore or something like that. I don't think many people are watching Inarritu's movies anyway, so I think he's pretty safe. I might compare Julianne Moore and Patricia Arquette. Those two are in very different career positions, and the one that's maybe less bankable made the more aggravating or polarizing argument or statements, and the one who's more bankable stuck with we have to fight Alzheimer's and give people with Alzheimer's recognition, which is not a very controversial statement, right? Anyone who's dealt with Alzheimer's.
Yeah, you will
It's
not find
pretty.
people on Twitter who believe that she made a misstep here, right? I think everybody's on board with Alzheimer's bad. I mean, one thing that I think is interesting, I don't think you're wrong, right? I mean, in fact, my sense is this is precisely where the risk is, right? You could find yourself in fairly serious trouble when it comes to your career and so on as a result of something that you say. Although, I don't know that there was anything in here that was, I don't know, that was even I mean, the Patricia Arquette thing is a good example because I don't know. I mean, even if you think that like she shouldn't have said it, right? If you on the right or on the left, right? She didn't do the right thing. I can't imagine that it's such a serious thing that people will get permanently worked up about it. On the other hand, I think of things, I'm trying to like push you, right? I want to make the other side here to see if there's another case to be made that this really isn't a big deal. It's not very risky. I mean, we see people who do things that are people who are well known, who do publicly far more unusual, controversial things, but who nonetheless continue to have great success in Hollywood with people all over the country and so on, right? And the thing that immediately comes to mind, of course, is Clint Eastwood talking to the chair as part of that of the whole last election campaign, right? And then he comes out and does American Sniper, and it's wildly successful, and nobody is talking about the his politics really, or his chair business, or what have you, right? And I don't know. I mean, maybe it is the case that liberals don't go see American Sniper, but I don't think that's true.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think my impression is that Eastwood's lost some credibility in Hollywood, which may or may not disturb him. I think, I mean, as you were saying that it's a room full of loony lefties. I think Clint Eastwood obviously stood out as not being that, and was in the audience. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You could consider Mel Gibson too. I think he has clearly lost support in Hollywood. No one's making any movies with him because they're concerned about box office. But
Right.
I wonder if he came out with a Lethal Weapon 6. I have a feeling a lot of people would go and see it. So it yeah, it's an interesting proposition, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, and maybe someone will watch this and they'll comment and let us know, right? I'm trying to think of actors in particular, right, who have made some sort of statement, actors, musicians, whatever, and have seen a serious hit to their career, right? I mean, Sean Penn is probably the best known in terms of championing all sorts of every liberal cause under the sun. He's also had all sorts of personal trouble in his past, that would make him, on the one hand, unpopular with the right, and on the other hand, unpopular with, well, maybe everyone. Um, but when Sean Penn does a movie, I mean, he's a bankable movie star, right? I mean,
I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't think he's been in anything for quite some time that's made anything. Um, I think he was on the stage for Milk, the Harvey Milk story, but since then there hasn't been a lot. And I actually saw some response to that last night. Like, why is Sean Penn presenting the Best Movie Award? And it's because he's got a reputation for I don't know, integrity, quality of work in Hollywood. But he's certainly also the guy that nearly killed Madonna in beating her senseless. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I think that shows also just the short-term memory of people, that
right.
this news cycle, so maybe we're overstating the risk in saying something on the stage because because of that short news cycle. I mean, is anyone going to be talking about Patricia Arquette on Friday? Possibly not.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, you're right. You know, um, he was in Milk in 2008, and then he did the Tree of Life in 2011.
Right, which only 6 people saw.
Right, and then he did Gangster Squad in 2013.
Which I've never heard of.
Yeah, it failed. It was supposed to have a lot of big names in it, and it failed. And now he's slated to do a movie coming out this year called The Gunman.
Yeah, so he's no bankable star.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I guess he hasn't been for some time, right? I keep thinking of him from when he was, right? But I guess that was it was the late '90s and early 2000s. Because in truth, before Milk, he hadn't done anything really since Mystic River. So, yeah, okay, fine. He's on the every 5-year plan.
Yeah, the other thing that I thought was interesting last night was Neil Patrick Harris's apparent lack of sensing what was happening. I think he kept making jokes after serious statements were being made. And the two that stand out for me was I can't remember what the award was. It might have been for a short documentary. And one of the women that came up to get the award was wearing a dress with lots of balls on it or something, and he said she was being played off by the music, and then just said that her son had killed himself, I think, or he had died recently, certainly, and then it crossed straight back to Neil Patrick Harris, who said, you know, that dress it takes a lot of balls to wear a dress like that. And it was just like, you probably could have just kept that joke in your pocket. And then after Citizen4, the Snowden documentary won and got, you know, huge applause because it's the Hollywood audience. He said, what did he say? It was a joke about treason.
Yeah, he said that's right. Apparently, though, Snowden thought it was funny. I know you haven't been on the internet, but Snowden and Poitras and Greenwald did an AMA earlier today while you were sleeping. Greenwald did not think it was funny. Snowden apparently did.
Well, I think it was ambiguous. I think it was ambiguous. I think it was. There would have been people at home saying, "Yeah, you know, screw that guy," but there. I mean, in my eyes, it just completely nullified the Poitras's speech. I mean, it was just, yeah. So, but he just didn't seem to. You would think a host would be able to catch onto the vibe that, wow, hey, everybody's getting pretty serious here tonight. I'm not gonna just cross back to me and make a corny joke. I don't know. I mean, it's a tough gig, no question. People have been panned for their performances before, but yeah, he just seemed to be tonally missing what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard spot to be in, right? I mean, and maybe this is sort of the other side of what we've been talking about, right? If he contributes, right, as the host, if he adds to the serious tone, if he agrees with what the presenters are saying, then he really opens himself up to criticism, right? Now what we're saying is he didn't read the room right, or you know, he made 2 jokes that some people thought didn't work or weren't funny or poorly timed, and that's disappointing, right? Because he's a smart guy and he's really clever. But you could also see the other side of it, right? Which is that, you know, if he sort of forgets his hosting duty for a moment and kind of chimes in with, you know, with similar political statements to those who just won awards, I wonder what the reaction would have been, right? So in some sense, maybe he's kind of he's playing the odds.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's generally in a tough position anyway to be a gay guy on our TV screens, but I mean, that's less tricky than it used to be, but he's obviously got to be cognizant of that and how tenuous fame is, I suppose.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think the other thing that would be interesting for me is to see what effect some of these causes see on after they've been called out. So I think I saw Steve Carell mentioned the what is it, the he for she movement on the red carpet. It seemed like, um, and I just wonder, like, what Alzheimer's groups found today. Um, but then again, I suppose a lot of them weren't specifically addressing groups. They were just speaking about issues, how difficult it is to be a gay teenager or trans, queer, or anything different really in high school. So maybe there's not such an uptick, but maybe there is. Maybe people are just Googling issues and they're finding their way to different sites. It would be interesting to see what positive effect comes out of being called out on the stage.
That's a really interesting question. This is one of those things where it'd be great to have some sort of after, a kind of wrap up where groups or issue focused kind of people can tell us what the hit was from that. It would also be really interesting to have those real time dials like they sometimes do during the State of the Union, where you can see people who either like or don't like something. It'd be really fascinating to to sort of see that as it's going on. I'm sure they have this sort of thing. I'm sure it's all being market tested and so on as it happens. It'd be really interesting to sort of know how that ended up shaking out. What did people agree with? What did people find problematic? And who were those people, right?
Yeah. One moment of heroism that I saw called out, and it was probably mentioned by Glenn Greenwald or Jeremy Scahill or someone, was that Snowden's girlfriend was there. So she, from what I understand, has been living in Russia with Snowden. So that's a pretty impressive thing by itself, moving yourself to Russia and very closely associating yourself with Snowden, but then to fly back into the US, where she could be, or any manner of things could happen to her flying back in. But then again, you wouldn't want to have that press when it's such a big story at the Oscars, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this could be a whole different conversation, right? Just the whole moving to Russia, that bastion of rights and press freedom and whatever else we want to call it, right? I mean, we could have a whole conversation about that, but all of that aside, yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, that story is probably the most interesting one, right? To see this kind of recognition for Snowden, for the documentary about that whole story and the way it developed and unfolded and so on, I think is really interesting. I know that it's on HBO now, or it will be on HBO in the next week or so. So it'll be really fascinating to see what kind of numbers it does now that it's getting this kind of attention and it's going to be sort of more widely available to people just sitting around. So I think that'll be really interesting. But it's a clear. I mean, that part of this I think has not gotten nearly the attention that I kind of thought it would. Right, as people are focusing on Patricia Arquette and whether women should be paid the same as men, which I think is the strange, like the controversy there. It just seems so strange to me. Whereas there's this this documentary about Snowden winning an award and these two, all these people up on stage talking about it, I would have thought that would have drawn all kinds of discussion. So that for me is that's really the most interesting part.
Yeah, I wonder if it has to do with the person sitting at home saying, "Don't make me feel bad." So the Snowden thing isn't really anyone's fault who's watching their TV at home. But if you're complaining about equal pay or you're complaining about civil rights, well, not complaining, but if you're addressing, then I imagine people at home can think, don't make me feel bad about being who I am or not doing what I don't do or whatever it might be.
Yeah. That's true. That's true. It would be interesting to sort of link up the tweets about the Citizen 4 win with the American Sniper a lack of winning, and to see, sort of how people in that camp dealt with the Academy Awards in general. I think would be really kind of fascinating.
Well, yeah, it certainly got called out a lot. But it got called out for the money that it had made. It seemed like a couple of times that point was made that American Sniper is incredibly popular and it's being ignored.
Yep.
All these quirky, boring movies are getting awards, but the one that everybody loves is not getting an award. There definitely seemed to be that happening at the event too.
Yeah. Which again I think tells us something about the temperature in the room as opposed to perhaps in the broader society. But I mean, this is nothing new, right? I mean, people always say that the wrong movies get picked and the wrong people are the winners and so on and so forth. It is interesting that there was so much debate when it came to heroism around American Sniper. And, we talk about how Hollywood loves hero stories and so on. But, that movie, despite making a ton of money, was not chosen, right? Despite being the kind of hero story that lots of people wanted to go see. And I think, I mean, maybe there's a lesson in that. Maybe there isn't, right? I mean, maybe it's just, there's a small, weird group of people who make these choices, and it's all very idiosyncratic. And you can go back through time and pick all the times they've gotten things wrong or gone against popular perception or whatever. Forrest Gump was a big winner. I'm going to get letters,
Yep.
But boy, Forrest Gump.
I have not been able to make myself watch that whole movie.
Does not stand up. That movie did not hold up over time. Even if you thought it was great in the moment when you saw him doing all those things, marching through history, jogging across the country, whatever you liked. Oh boy, it doesn't hold up. Well, look, I think this is an interesting conversation. I think it's fascinating to see, what it is that's drawing people's attention, and it's also fascinating to see people kind of shining a light on issues that they care about, and saying, this may have a cost, but I'm gonna be true to myself, and I'm gonna say a thing that I think is important. And these are all people who knew that it would get a positive reception where they were, but they also knew the way that, obviously, the way that we're so polarized today about everything, they were going to draw a response that wasn't going to be uniformly positive, even if everybody in that room was cheering for them. And so in that sense, I mean, I think there is something noteworthy in all of the statements that we saw, right? When you take them all together, as you say, this was a statement-heavy Academy Awards presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think speaking about an event that's attended by international audience and has people speaking about causes that are close to them, we just launched our Hero Roundtable for 2015 ticketing. So people, regular listeners of the podcast, you should definitely make your way there. HeroRoundtable.com. We've got, I think, 7 or 8 speakers confirmed up on the page. I've got a couple that I'm speaking to this week that I'm just very excited to announce to people. And you're one of the people on the page. So yeah, I'm excited that this is happening again. It's we're going to do one in Michigan and one in Australia this year. So it's been a busy week in front of the cricket, orchestrating all this stuff. But it's been great.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I'm excited that it's happening. There was some question about the one that would that would be taking, whether it would be taking place in Michigan or not. Michigan, of course, has been well, it's my home originally, but it's also been the home of the Hero Roundtable for its first inaugural years. But now in its third year, there was this idea of it moving, and I'm very glad that it's going to be back in Michigan. I love returning to Michigan. We'll be in Brighton this year, which should be really nice. I'm excited to get up on stage. I've got an all new presentation worked out, and you'll be excited to know, much like I'm speaking to you right now, no notes, no notes. There might even be some slides to click through. You might see some beautiful ancient Greek urns with pictures on them, but it's all leading in the direction of the sort of thing we've been talking about here lately. That is, things that people can do in their everyday lives to prepare themselves for heroism. And I'll be using kind of ancient examples to kind of bring out the commonalities that people have with the classic heroes that they know and love. So it should be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for it. You've got great people lined up even at this early stage because, of course, this isn't happening until September. But if people go to HeroRoundtable.com and get excited about it, they ought to buy their tickets now because the price is very, very low.
It is. It's $75 until the end of March. So that'll go up to 125 or 150 or something as March comes to an end. So yeah, I mean, it's a really low price to come for 2 days of great speakers, and we should get someone on the show who's been to one of the conferences before and have them talk about their experience, because we are a bit close to it.
That's right. And jaded. We're jaded. So we'll get someone who's been there and who's young and excited about everything. They can tell people exactly what's so great about it. But especially for people in the U.S. and Canada, it's so much cheaper than really any other conference you can go to, and much less expensive than going all the way to Australia. So I highly recommend the Hero Roundtable, September, what is it, Matt? September 18, 19?
18, 19, yep.
In Brighton, Michigan. Details at HeroRoundtable.com. And we'll be talking more about it, obviously, over the next several months. You'll hear more as we get more speakers announced, and obviously the website will continue to be updated, and it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and if you want to see the new speakers get announced as they come in, you should follow the Facebook page, which is just Hero Roundtable. I discovered this morning that you no longer get updates or notifications on Facebook when your page goes over some number. We had a weird viral video that got us more than 2,000 new likes in the last 24 hours, and so I don't get notifications that people have left comments anymore. So it makes me check back more often, I suppose.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Join all of us in Michigan. Join the online community on Facebook, and we'll be back in short order with the next installment of the Hero Report podcast.
Indeed. We'll see you then.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good one.